Allora, innanzitutto volevo ringraziare il Ministro perché è riuscito in una...
We'd like to thank Minister Lollobrigida for making himself available to us for this short press conference. So it's been a pleasure meeting you and walking you around the trade fair. My first question is very simple. What do you think about EMA? Well, let me welcome all of you. I'd like to welcome all the operators and the people that I've been able to meet this morning and that contribute to making this excellent job. This sector is exporting a lot, so this is something we feel very proud of, but you produce also a lot in Italy. So the supply chain is supported by promotional events like this one. And let me salute the rector of the University of Bologna, is a rector and very passionate about agriculture. And then we have the Minister for Infrastructure, who's also very interested in the development of a whole sector that shouldn't be isolated, but in partnership with others should create the necessary clout to promote agriculture, which is an excellence of this country with a positive impact for many related sectors. This country and Europe should go back to agriculture as a central activity. Over the last few months, we've realized something that we were taking for granted, and it was not to be taken for granted. You know, we thought that the agri-food chain could make it possible for us to make cost-oriented decisions. You can buy your wheat anywhere, and then it gets to your table everywhere. But we've seen that is not the case in the wake of the Ukrainian conflict. So we are going through a very problematic period, and that applies to wheat and fertilizers and much else that we deemed easily viable on the international market. Well, we rediscovered the value of food that we might have forgotten for many years, ever since we were kids. Let me ask you a question on robotics now. We're investing a lot on robotics, and not only there, but also electrification, agriculture 4.0. And initially, we aimed at reducing input costs, chemicals and fertilizers. But over the last few years, with the coming up of robotics, we've changed our paradigm. Robotics, in fact, has a positive impact on manpower requirements. In Italy, we have issues with illegal immigration and illegal work in agriculture. And we've gone through a paradigm change talking about robotics. So we have robots performing individual operations, one at a time. Do you think we can envisage a system of incentives for that in order to reduce unskilled labor requirements in agriculture? Of course, there's a bit of robotics, electronics, and large machinery meant to replace humans. Well, having to work less and less hard has been something that humans have been looking for from time immemorial, not replacing human labor, but making it less hard in order to increase production. This is something we certainly have to go for, trying to increase production. We can do so in different ways with GMOs that we don't like and reject, or introducing new technologies for better use of soil. and that means we are very favorable and totally in line with the research carried out in different segments and areas that can play a central role in this activity, farming. I've been really impressed, by the award or the awards given to the technical innovations, amazing machines. Then, of course, we have to adopt new technologies while respecting the needs of the agricultural world. We tend to believe that the new tractors are ready there to replace the older models, but that's not the case in the Italian Resilience and Recovery Plan. There's a measure about the purchase of agricultural machinery, which is only meant for electric vehicles, which are play a minor role so far in the chain, and using more ecological fuels, leaving out the stage 5 motorization. This is unthinkable because, in fact, that call is not going to be attended, and we're rediscussing the guidelines with the EU institutions, which are dangerous for the whole chain, because if you encourage people to buy vehicles to modernize the system and increase production, and then the call goes unanswered, then we're going nowhere. So we need to adopt a more strategic logic, which has been missing over the last few years, setting a goal, trying to reach it, while bearing in mind that that goal from environmental production viewpoint must go hand in hand with another important element, which is logic and common sense, which is somehow missing in certain areas. I tend to look at statistical data, and then solution can be found by listening to experts. And I've been able to meet a lot of experts here, and I've heard things that can be put into practice at our ministry. Thank you very much. Let's now open it to the floor. We have many journalists here with us. Who's going first?
Grazie mille, scusate, Lorenzo Tosi, Terra e Vita.
Lorenzo Tosi from Terra e Vita. We are talking about the Resilience and Recovery Plan and EU institutions, so let's talk about the agrivoltaico, the use of alternative energy sources in this country. It takes a lot of innovation. You mentioned GMOs, but now we have TAs which are very promising for our agriculture. So two very interesting issues. I was passing by one of the few electric vehicles on display here, and there was one question. When you have an electric vehicle, where are you going to find the recharge units? So you have to get energy out of the recharge units. That must be provided. This is a challenge. We need to redefine our calls. So producing energy and selling energy at the same time. You know, if you walk along a road or a motorway, right and left, you tend to see fields and countryside. So if you can produce energy in those fields, why not selling it by encouraging people to use electric vehicles and, of course, providing recharge units whenever you want electric vehicles to be used and adopted that have electric or hybrid engines. The second question, you gave it by yourself. You gave the answer by yourself. GMOs and changing the seeds, so changing the DNA. this is very complex. We're not very convinced by that kind of technology. We should go on with the usual techniques, strengthening the seeds and forcing evolution in a positive direction, speeding it up. This is much more convincing for us, and I think it's compatible with the development and protection of the ecosystem and the different species which shouldn't be pushed but helped to grow. Any more questions?
Buongiorno, Tano Boschetti,
Tano Boschetti from Informatore Agrario. I have two brief questions. Number one, what's the ministry's stance on the draft document on the sustainable use of herbicides and their reduction? Secondly, being able to establish a dialogue with the other departments and ministries to overcome issues related to logistics. We have logistics costs much higher than other countries. It takes us twice as long than the Spanish colleagues to reach the German markets. Crop protection products and agricultural chemicals. I think that farmers are environmentally friendly. They get their resources out of the soil, and that's where they can feed their children, themselves as well. Farmers are very close to the land, to the soil. They don't think about themselves only, but they have to leave something healthy for future generations coming after them. In Italy, we have a sustainable agricultural system, one of the most sustainable ones on the planet, and we should value it. Ideologically, we could say that somebody is convinced that we can put rules into place that damage production on the one hand, but are not or offset by a customs duty policy, whereby goods produced without any respect for labor regulations get to our markets at lower costs. This is a distortion that has to be resolved somehow, either by adopting the right political measures about the use of agricultural chemicals and paying attention to research into that area, whereby we can somehow find a way to reduce the use of chemicals, thereby reducing pollution and contamination, or taking our time and guarantee production price and sustainability to our economy. Well, the other option, and give a competitive edge based on a customs duty-oriented policy. It's either or. There's no third option. You're no longer producing economically and you're losing money. So I don't think one should work and lose money. I don't get it. Over and above the artistic or farming vocations of some people, I don't know any entrepreneur who's obliged to lose their money. What was the other question about logistics? Another essential point, we set up a Ministry of the Sea. What's the sea got to do with it? It's strategic. We were talking about logistics in Italy, which is a total disaster. We worked in a very segmented way. Well, of course, we can create different types of centers, and then we have to provide railway connections. We need to have the road system connecting port facilities to the rest of the country and beyond our country, so the port authorities have to be in contact with their international counterparts. So we need some planning for better efficiency of the system and reduction of costs with a good hub and spoke system from the point of departure to the point of arrival. There should be a continuous or seamless support and assistance. That's why I'm mentioning the sea, because it's very important in logistic terms. The sea is the point of departure, both for imports and exports. And on the other hand, we should imagine an integrated logistics based on a strategical approach. Our Vice Minister for Infrastructure, Mr. Bignami, is collaborating with us and the new government, committed not to adopt a sector-oriented or driven approach, a segmented approach, over and above political majorities. And, obviously, minister is sometimes against or doesn't communicate with the minister of the ministry next door. So we need to have a more homogeneous approach in the coalition. If we have the problem of drought, for instance, you have to think of the water catchment. You need to think of the money you need to take care of water resources. Then the Minister of Infrastructure should be in contact with the Minister of Environment and Agriculture and says, well, the Italian regulations make that impossible. So we should remove the limiting regulations in order to find resources and solve the problems of a critical sector such as agriculture, and in view of climate change, which is, as you know, affecting us all and prevent us from having enough water in many parts of our country.
We have 2 minutes left. Ivano Mallori, Agronotizie. A question talking about you were talking about duties, but let's talk about data now. If the consumers knew how the made in Italy agri-food products are made, where they come from, the passion with which they're made, with all the information behind the product. Are there policies aimed at telling the truth behind the Italian agricultural production? Your question is most correct. Let me start from the negative side. There is a policy which is summarized with Nutri-Score, and it penalizes the Italian products. Nutri-Score says that, for example, Parmigiano Reggiano is bad, while the nutritional bars produced in France and Germany are most healthy. Consumers have to be informed with a system that guarantees quality through a special method. Why are we doing this in Italy, but not just in Italy? There are other countries that have adopted the same position as ours. We have difficulties in Italy competing in terms of quantities, the Chinese and the Indians are much better than we are, other nations as well, but we compete on quality. Italian products of excellence cannot be copied. Still today, I'm not surprised because most of the machines I've seen here are produced in Italy. You cannot copy ideas and the mind of people, the brains of people. If you have geniuses, good people that are talented, you cannot copy them elsewhere. And then we have high quality manufacturing processes in Italy. You can't copy them. You can try and cheat. We could write many books about Italian sounding products and the lack of protection of Italian production. Well, on last October the 23rd, at ministry level, we changed the voting of Italy from abstaining to protection of Italian production, Italian produce and wine. At European level, we will defend quality. This is what we have added to the name of the ministry, food sovereignty. It's not autarky. When I come here and I discover that in some strategic sectors that I'm not going to mention here, we have 70% exports. Well, this is our goal. It's exactly the opposite of autarky, which means doing everything inside here. Well, food sovereignty means defending our brands and our production from unfair aggression, and also at the center of the agricultural supply chain there have to be the consumer and the producer. The producers must have an income from their job, and consumers must have high quality products in their hands. Agricultural economy, erases agriculture and leaves laboratory produced steaks on the market. That's a criminal act. In Italy we will not have laboratory produced steaks on the tables of the next generation. And also the wine without alcohol. I accept the fact that someone does not drink alcohol. Well, if there are attempts at trying to certify wine as a dangerous product, yet it's been used for many years and people are all healthy. Now, if you want to produce wine without alcohol, then you call it must or juice or whatever you want. So wine must contain alcohol. Well, I fully agree concerning wine and alcohol-free wine. Michela from Agrinotizie, we said that technology is the key to the current agriculture, not the future agriculture, but to do so you have to support businesses and farms so that they invest in technologies. Do you expect to provide for incentives in a well-structured program, not just a sporadic one? And will there be an extension of digital agri-mechanics, which is required all over the world? And what about the decree which is missing in relation to a law of 2012, where we still have a gap to fill? Thank you very much for your questions. I won't talk about choices. Well, what's the time now? It's 1:10. So at the present time, President Meloni in Palazzo Chigi, and I had to leave, but there is Undersecretary La Pietra at the meeting. They're meeting the representatives of the agricultural world to cover all these topics. I won't say anything because, it's being discussed at the moment at a meeting between ministers and the representatives of agriculture, so as to develop the adequate strategies. That's actually your point. You were asking for a strategy. It's not just about spending resources. This was also our criticism to the National Resilience and Recovery Plan. The resources require a strategy, of course, but and they're very important. We should defend them. We don't think that they're useless. But what is it that you do in your household or in your business? If you have money, you can decide to spend it, and that's it. Maybe consumption increases and so on and so forth. But money has to be spent in the right way. The National Resilience and Recovery Plan, we would like to change it because some measures were undertaken not to spend well, but to spend, and that's it. Since, we're going to be indebted for the coming generations, we have to spend that money in the right way, according to a strategic approach. Well, I've never been a big fan of the previous governments. I can't deny this, but 4.0 was the right choice, I would say. Thank you very much. We haven't got time for further questions. I'm sorry. The Minister has another commitment with European members of Parliament. Well, there's one final point. Unfortunately, the question was asked off mic. Well, the government asks Parliament which way to go. Yesterday there was motion by our colleague Mattia, who is an expert in agriculture. He was the director of a major association. He wanted a revision of 157 of 92 because there is an alert for farming and also for the healthcare system, because you have a devastation of agricultural fields and you don't really want to work there anymore. And on the other hand, you have a health problem if by chance one of the wild boars that are crossed with pigs, because, well, I won't go into the details of the wild boar species, but there are hybrid species that, devastate the fields like the wild boars and get swine fever like the pigs. If one wild boar decides to die close to a pig farm, you are, as a rule, bound to kill all those pigs. Since we think we have to protect prophylaxis, a solution must be found. Some people say, who cares? Let's produce steaks in the lab, but that's not the solution. We asked ISPRA what the situation is like. Is there some kind of solution, some kind of contraceptive we can adopt so that 1.3 million wild boars do not reproduce so rapidly? Yes, but you can't give it through food. You have to inject this sort of contraceptive. So I don't know whether you can chase sows and inject this contraceptive. Well, in that case, it could be a solution. Otherwise, the solution is provided for in Law 157, which is selective hunting, to avoid all the critical issues in terms of health and loss of production. Well, this is not ideological. You have to think in practical terms. If you have a problem, you can't turn your back to it. We don't think we have solutions. We are asking for solutions from the scientific and the productive world. But if someone says, turn your back to the problem, well, we can't accept this. We won't do that. In line with the request of Parliament, we will consider a revision of Law 157. We will soon change it and approve a system which ensures something proper to the producers. You were talking about illegal recruitment. They found a sick deer today, so all the beef production will be stopped for 1 month because those cattle were going to slaughters in northern Italy. It was a rare disease. It was just one deer. We were told about this morning, but production came to a halt. And there's also another problem. The